Mr. Cuellar.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Mr. Secretary, it's good seeing you again. What I want to do is focus on performance. This last ominous appropriation bill, we added some language that applies to all agency heads, including yourself, that says that as you prepare your funding request as part of the President's annual budget and in consultation with the GAO, you should directly link your performance plan under the GIPRA tied into that performance measures. And in there, you got to show that those performance measures, if we give you $1, what do we get for that bank for $1? Then it goes on, in particular, performance measures should examine outcome measures, output, everything as defined under GIPRA. One of the things that I would ask you to do is, when we were looking at the performance.gov and looked at your performance goals, and there's a handout, members, if you will look at the handouts that we handed out, and I think we gave you a copy also, Mr. Secretary, I would ask you to look at, for example, your budget last year was, at least the general purpose discretionary was $39.2 billion. How much money do you think out of that is used for terrorism, which is your number one goal, preventing terrorism, roughly? Just a rough estimate.
Well, it depends on, there's probably a number that we attribute out of that 39.2 to counterterrorism someplace. It depends obviously on what aspects of our mission do you consider could be potentially counterterrorism mission? You know, what aspect of the Secret Service's budget goes to counterterrorism? But I suspect there is a number assigned to that, and I just don't have it offhand.
If you can get that to us later on, just roughly. But I would say, venture to say, it's billions of dollars that we put in terrorism. Is that correct?
That is probably correct, yes, sir. Okay.
And then your number one goal, you set different goals, and I'm just taking everything you have in performance.gov. Your number one goal is to prevent terrorism. And then there's measures tied in that to that, Mr. Secretary. Now, would you venture to say, and I'm looking at members, I would ask you to take a look at this. If we spend billions of dollars in your number one goal, your first performance measure is the percentage of intelligence report rated satisfactory or higher in customer feedback that enable customers to understand the threat. And then you go on, the second one, the percentage of intelligence report rated satisfactory or higher in customer feedback that enable customers to anticipate emerging threats. And I think you retired that performance measures, and then you go into some other ones. Now, would you say that for members of the appropriation, that if we appropriate billions of dollars, that the number one measure you should have is how satisfied are those people that get those intelligence reports? Is that what we should be measuring? Again, I took everything out of performance.gov, and I assume all that is correct.
The way your question is stated, I'd have to say no.
Okay. And then I would venture to say, I would ask you to go back with your folks and look at this language that we added to the omnibus bill. Ask you to look at what outcomes, because I think the outcome we ought to be looking at after we put billions of dollars should be numbers of terrorist acts committed in the United States should be zero. I think that's the result or the impact that we're looking at. I would ask you to look at that because y'all are looking at activities. And again, I would ask your staff to look at the definition of what an outcome measure is, which is results or impact, what output is and all that. I would also ask you, I don't have this, but if you look at one of the things that I'm very familiar with, since I breathe the air and drink the water in the Rio Grande and I live there, on securing the land ports, for example, I think we should have much better measures than what you have here. So again, I would ask you to just look at that, work with us, work with GEO and members. I would ask you to take a look at that. Mr. Chairman, you're familiar with what we did in Texas, because with the state legislature, we have different measures. And again, we would love to sit down and look at this because we're just measuring activity. After billions and billions of dollars for your number one goal, and the number one measure is, are you happy with the report we gave you? I think we can do better than that. But, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield back the balance of my time. Thank you so much.